Important news tonight for American families. The federal government says it's stepping up the monitoring of U.S. food and water in light of Japan's nuclear crisis, and because of that, detected traces of radiation in a milk sample from Spokane, Washington. A joint statement from the Food and Drug Administration and the Environmental Protection Agency says these types of findings are to be expected in the coming days, and that statement emphasized the traces are far below the levels to cause any public health concern, including for infants and children. Over in Japan, the latest news, much more disturbing. The International Atomic Energy Agency reports tonight excessive radiation in a town beyond the Japanese evacuation zone. Other measurements show radioactive iodine levels in the ocean water off the plant are the highest yet, 3,000 times the regulatory limit. CNN's Kyung Law is following developments from Tokyo. And Kyung, given this IAEA report, are there any plans to expand the evacuation zone and move people further back from the Fukushima plant?
Well, that's a natural call from Greenpeace, who certainly has an anti-nuclear position. And Greenpeace has said in that town where the IAEA picked up that high level of radiation, which is 40 kilometers outside that exclusion zone. The exclusion zone is currently 20 kilometers. At this point, Greenpeace says they've picked up levels that are 50 times higher than what has been, than what's allowed in the regulatory limit. So certainly what Greenpeace is saying is that the government is just not doing enough to protect the population at large. Okay, so what is happening on the ground as far as picking up the different levels of radiation? In the ocean water, what you mentioned, that 3,000 times level, it is 3,350 times, 55 times higher than the regulatory limit. Japan's Nuclear Safety Agency says at this point that does not pose any sort of significant threat to marine wildlife, but it certainly does raise an alarm here. And part of the question is where is this radiation coming from? Is it airborne? Is there a leak inside the plant? At this point, the plant just doesn't know. Why? Because there is radioactive water in the plant in places where it should not be. Workers cannot step into this radioactive water to eyeball if there is a leak. And the radioactive water is in places like a tunnel which houses some electrical wire. So until they get rid of that radioactive water, they simply don't know where this leak is, if there is indeed a leak. So today the effort will focus on getting rid of that radioactive water. But again, that is easier said than done. The containment tanks are already full, John. They've got to drain those first.
And as we watch that and we pray that there's progress made there, we're also watching more broadly the recovery effort. And you visited a small town in northern Japan that just graduated some of its youngest residents. Let's take a look and listen to what you found.
In nearly every way, this appears to be your average grade school graduation, until you look closely at the children, all wearing donated clothes, and you listen to what they sing. A song for their destroyed school, parents grieving lost spouses and grandparents, homes and much of their town lost when the tsunami ripped through Osuchi. In the crowd, mother Yukari Mokushi, whose daughter is among today's 6th grade graduates, but her husband, he's missing, she says. My daughter is graduating and I want him to be here. Takumi Sasaki's grandfather died in the tsunami. His grandmother wept for what her husband would never see.
Kyung, as you watch that, all the children survived, but their village, their families, so many challenges ahead. Just take us there. What's it like?
It's really difficult to be inside that auditorium watching these kids trying to do something that's so normal, which is closing the end of the school year, because they don't really have anything to look forward to. They aren't going to start the school year on time. They don't know where they're going to go to school. In fact, they don't have houses to live in. A lot of those children are living in that same auditorium. They're sleeping on blankets. They just don't have anywhere to go. Some of those children have lost parents. Many of them have lost grandparents. It is much easier to find someone who has lost a family member than to find someone who has remained intact, where everyone has survived. So the amount of heartbreak in this just one sliver of this one place in northern Japan is just simply heartbreaking.
Kyung Law for us in Tokyo tonight. Fabulous reporting. Tragic, but fascinating reporting. Thank you so much for your help understanding this tragedy and the recovery effort. When we come back,